let us introduce you to J.R.R. Tolkien, the father of fantasy novel. If someone says the name J.R.R. Tolkien, you may doubt who he is. Why is he so important? But if I say The Lord of the Rings, I'm sure you must have heard of it. John Ronald Reuel Tolkien is a British philosopher, scholar, poet, and also the author of many fantasy novels.
John Ronald Reuel Tolkien was born on the 3rd of January 1892 in Bloemfontein, South Africa. The Tolkien family were originally Germans who emigrated to England in the 18th century and had become adapted to the English society since then. Arthur Reuel Tolkien, the father, received a promotion to be head of the Bloemfontein office for the British bank for which he worked for, and thus the couple set off towards Bloemfontein before their first son was born. According to Carpenter's written biography on Tolkien, he was bitten by a baboon spider during his infancy in the garden, in which some think echoed in parts of his writing. Tolkien, however, admits no memory of it and has no hatred against spiders.
With the age of only 3, Tolkien visited England and his extended family with his mother and brother. However, his father, Arthur, passed away with rheumatic fever in Africa, and so was unable to make it to England. Without his father, the family had no income. Tolkien's mother decided to take him to live with his grandparents in King's Heath, Birmingham.
There, he was homeschooled. His mother taught him a variety of subjects, but Tolkien's interest lay mostly on languages, especially Latin. With the age of only 4, he was able to read, and not long after, able to write. This seemed to provide evidence of Tolkien's talent and ability in languages. At the age of 8, Tolkien was enrolled at King Edward's School, a rather expensive and prestigious school. In the same year of his enrollment, however, his mother converted to a Roman Catholic, which angered her strict Protestant parents. Thus, he had to move to St. Philip's School after financial support from his grandparents ceased. After, because of Tolkien's talent and ability, he was awarded a scholarship from King Edward's School, and thus began enrolling again in 1903. A year later, his mother passed away at a young age due to diabetes when insulin was yet to be discovered. The guardianship of the Tolkien brothers shifted to a friend of their mother's, Francis Xavier Morgan, who led them to be good Catholics.
During Tolkien's study in King Edward's School in 1911, he, together with his friends, secretly formed the Teacup and Balowian Society. Tolkien enjoyed attending club meetings and the formations of them. Wherever he went, his interest was placed on the formations of literary, scholarly, and reading clubs. After they graduated, a council was held at Wise Man's home, and Tolkien became dedicated to writing poetry as a result of this meeting. In the same year, Tolkien received a scholarship from the Exeter College, Oxford, where he initially majored in classics, but changed to study the English language and literature. 4 years later, in 1915, he graduated with first-class honor in his final examinations. According to Hampey Carpenter, Tolkien fell in love with Edith Mary Bratt at the age of 16. However, to prevent Tolkien from being distracted from his study, mentioned earlier, his guardian forbade him to see her again until he turned 21. On his 21st birthday, Tolkien sent a letter of proposal to Edith, and they were reunited again under the bridge that reminded them of their old relationship. However, Edith was already engaged to another man at the time. Nonetheless, she was voluntary to his proposal, which in consequence led to their marriage in 1916 at St. Mary Immaculate Roman Catholic Church, Warwick. Together, they had 4 children in total. John Francis Rule, Michael Hilary Rule, Christopher John Rule, and Priscilla Ann Rule.
Tolkien participated in the First World War as a second lieutenant for the British Army. The Lonely Isle, one of Tolkien's poems, was inspired by the departure of his troop from England. After a short while at war, Tolkien carried extremely depressing feelings back from war, as most of his close friends from the Tea Club Barovian Society died in war. This memory was deeply pressed into Tolkien's mind and was formulated into words in his first novel, The Book of Lost Tales, which expresses his feelings from the First World War.
After the war ended, he worked as an etymologist of words at Oxford English Dictionary headquarters. Tolkien moved to Oxford to work as a professor for University of Cambridge. There, Tolkien's popularity increased, and his former students encouraged him to publish The Hobbit, a book written for his own children. Having originally been a bedtime story for his children, Tolkien did not expect that his story would be extremely popular worldwide.
In 1926, the Coalwriters Club was formed, and there, Tolkien met one who had thoughts that were similar to his, C.S. Lewis, the writer of the Chronicles of Narnia. Both Tolkien and Lewis were interested in northern myths, and the two often had conversations about Asgard and the gods of the north. Together, they formed the Inklings Club for the meeting of friends who were teachers from Oxford University and also writers. The gathering was held mainly for discussions, readings, and criticism of each other's work. The Inklings was a close society for friends, and thus had no formal election, rules, officers, or agenda.
Tolkien began one of his most famous works, The Lord of the Ring, with support from his friend C.S. Lewis. The Lord of the Ring was an epic, 3-volume novel, which included The Fellowship of the King, The Two Towers, and The Return of the King. The inspirations of this piece of work started in his mind after Tolkien graduation from Exeter College, Oxford. Initially, Tolkien intended for this trilogy to be a childish tale, but it gradually grew darker and then eventually captures enormous attention from all generations of readers, including among Nazi elites. His academic writing of old nerds and German history caught their attentions, although he himself made no attempt to hide his dislike toward Hitler and Nazi Germany. Tolkien's novel had inspired various people from different occupations. A cartoonist, Jeff Smith, admits that his series Bone was characterized by Tolkien. One part of his series was a park of Bugs Bunny, a famous cartoon character, meets The Lord of the Rings. Time magazines called the part as sweeping as The Lord of the Ring, but much funnier. This created uncountable arts and has been successfully brought into TV dramas and movies. The Lord of the Rings itself has earned a trilogy movie and has called tremendous attention to his work. There were also several festivals and traditions that originated from The Lord of the Rings. The phenomenon led to the interventions of the word Tolkienian and Tolkienist, which were added into the Oxford English Dictionary later on when the word was widely used, along with the 8 other words by Tolkien including Hobbit and Wag. Seminars were held by leading international specialists and friends at the Exeter College in August 2006 to encourage the growth of Tolkien study through the international collaborations, and they were well recognized. Books from the conference had popularly been distributed as complimentary pieces, and it was regarded as the greatest book of 20th century. In addition, Tolkien invented language for fun. He kept his mind well occupied with interviewing new language, many of which was used extensively in his writing. For example, the Elvish language, Quenya and Sindarin. Songs and poems were also written in his fictional language. Tolkien also worked to reconstruct and write in extinct language, such as the medieval Welsh and Lombardic. His poem, Bagma, Balma, the flower of the tree, may have been the first original work written in Gothic language in over a millennium.
After World War II in 1945, Tolkien moved to work at Merton College, Oxford, as a professor of language and literature until his retirement in 1959. After his retirement to his death was when his novels were very famous, and the earnings from his copyright share was substantially above what he earned from being a professor.
In 1971, his wife passed away. Tolkien engraved the word Luthien on her grave almost a year later. At 81, he declared an intention to have his body buried in the same grave as his wife, and that the word will be engraved after his name will be Baron. Both names Baron and Luthien were characters from the tales of Baron and Luthien, a love story between mortal man Baron and the immortal elf Maiden, a character inspired by his wife Luthien. On September 2, in 1973, one of the most talented, influential person passed away, a writer who has also known as the father of fantasy, J.R.R. Tolkien.